Ah, there we go. I can see and hear you now.
Hey, yeah.
Okay,
How are you?
let me I'm doing good. Let me make sure the live stream is going and stuff and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. Live stream is fine. The notices haven't gone out yet though. Give it 1 minute or so.
Yeah.
When as I mentioned, when we have a guest, you have priority for topics. You mentioned there were a couple things you wanted to talk about, so
Yeah,
we'll.
sure.
I figure we usually do 3 segments. Nice mug.
Hmm. This was like 50% intentional, right?
Of course.
Hmm.
No, I
But I
figure we
do.
usually do. We usually do 3 segments. Completely up to you what you want to do. We usually do the first one, sort of stuff and more newsy as we go, but that doesn't matter. You can jump straight into the news stuff if you want to, and if you end up stumped at a point, we can. I've got a list I can draw from as well.
Oh,
Uh, now
sure.
let me now let me. I'm noticing it's the uploading is going really slow. Let's give it a
Yeah.
second.
I don't know how
How's
I'm
yours?
looking. I don't know how I'm looking to you, but you are lagging sometimes.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've got like yeah, it's showing me like 24% uploaded, and it's
hmm
usually at like 99 all the time. So let's give it a second, see if something's going on with my network, and I
hmm
will, if necessary, I'll disconnect and reconnect and
Okay.
see if we get something better.
Mine
You
has
you
been
look
in the
you look
90s.
okay, so you're probably
Mhm.
good. You look blurry to me too, but it may be that
Hmm.
my network's just doing something goofy right now. So
Okay.
um, let me do one of those speed test things.
Yeah, you look blurry to me again, and the audio went robotic.
Yeah, that's no good. That's no good.
Yeah.
Let's see.
If mine keeps saying 98, 99, and yours doesn't, do you think the problem's on your side? Because I can reset my modem
Yeah,
also.
no, I think I think the problem's on my side. Although
Okay.
like I'm doing the speedtest.net, and so far it's showing absolutely fine. So let me I am going to leave. I'm going to leave the studio and come back in and
Okay.
refresh and see if that fixes anything. You should stay. You'll still be live streaming while I'm gone. So like, uh,
I'll be good.
don't do anything embarrassing. Okay, back after this, or
All right.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Okay, let's see if I'm any better. If I'm not any better, I'll actually reboot my computer and see if that helps. It looks like I'm not any better.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Okay, I'm gonna leave again. I'll reboot. I'll be right back. Sorry,
Okay.
it'll take a couple minutes. Here we go.
All right. Hey, I'm here.
Hey,
I'm
let's
just
see.
hiding while you're gone.
Okay. Yeah, no, and not any better yet, which is I don't understand. Like my
Hmm.
network speed is exactly like normal. It appears to be just my connection to Riverside that's bad.
Huh.
Okay, let's see. Am I uploading? I see you 90%. I'm going up. Okay, it's improving. Let's give it a minute.
Sure.
27, 28, 29. Like if it gets up into the 80s, 90s, we're probably good to go.
Okay.
Uh,
We've been live streaming this whole time, right?
yes, yes.
This is the sort of compelling content I think your viewers come for, right?
This is why the live stream is so engaging and we get lots of people on there every time. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Well, this is why like the main thing is the audio podcast that like has this stuff taken out, or most of it anyway. I only keep something from this part if it's like funny. So uh, okay, I'm up to 45%. It's going up steadily,
Mhm.
slowly but surely. Let's if so I think we're probably good, but let me let it go up a little bit higher first.
Sure. Did you intentionally turn your camera off? I can't see you right now.
You can't see me. I can
No.
see me
It
and the live stream can see me.
okay.
Um, yeah, I'm checking my pictures on the live stream, my pictures on here. Maybe you disconnect and reconnect now. If you do that, if you see anything that says like uploading or whatever, let it finish before. But like, yeah, go ahead and if you still can't see me, jump out and jump back in again and see if that fixes it.
All right, I'll try that right now. Be right back.
Can you see me now?
Okay,
There you go. Can you see me now?
I can.
Okay, and my number's up to 65. When it hits 70, we can just start because I think we're
Yeah,
okay. And you're not. Can you see me? Am I all pixelated, or can you see me and hear me properly now?
you look good.
Okay, good. And yeah, we don't seem to have a bunch of lag, so excellent. As soon as we hit 70, I'll start. We're at 67 now. So while we're waiting for it to go up, what happened to your the thing you were going to go to? Did it get rescheduled or is it
No,
over?
uh, no. My wife is doing the driving,
Okay.
so I'm free. And I know in my mind I meant to email or text you to say, "Hey, I can actually start sooner." But I clearly never did that, right? So you were very surprised today, and it was kind of a mix of I had 3 o'clock in my mind. So did you,
Uh-huh.
but different time zone.
Right.
Anyway, I'm glad this worked out, but whatever.
Okay.
I
Cool.
shouldn't say whatever, right? It's your show, man. I feel like I'm inconveniencing you.
No, it's quite all right. I was working on some other stuff on my computer, and um, could do this just as easily now as in 3 hours. So all good. Okay,
All right.
I'm ready to go. I'm going to play the intro and then start. Just a reminder before we start, at the very end, once I say goodbye, hang on until after the music, until I actually tell you it's okay, it's safe to hang up. And even then, you'll get a little progress indicator saying you're uploading. Wait for it to say you're complete before you actually close the window and stuff. Okay?
Yeah. All right. Got it.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to Curmudgeon's Corner for Saturday, November 15th, 2025. It's 1946 UTC as we're starting to record today. I'm Sam Minter, and we did hope to have Yvonne Bowe back today, but he let me know a few days ago that he's still recovering. He's still not feeling great. Specifically, he can't sit for too long at a single stretch as he recovers from his surgery. So he bowed out for another week, and I asked for volunteers, and so we have Todd again. Todd joined us. What was it? A few months ago? What? Yeah, I
It
don't know.
was.
I have
Yeah.
a list somewhere. It was back in May.
Yeah. I was thinking April or May. It was tariff season when I joined.
Yeah, and so we talked about tariffs and all that, but Todd has volunteered to be with us again. As usual, when I have a guest, the guest controls the agenda. So I'm gonna turn it over for Todd in a bit, and we'll just have have a conversation about whatever Todd wants to talk about, and then hopefully next week, Yvonne will feel good enough to actually join us on the show again. So here we go.
Yeah. I'm so intrigued now, though, because I don't know the nature of his surgery, and we don't need to talk about it now,
Well, he's
certainly.
talked
But
about it on the show, so it's okay. He had a hernia, and
okay. So if he cannot sit for long periods, does that mean he has to stand and walk around, or does that mean he has to lay down? I'm curious if I ever need
I
to have
haven't
this done.
asked all those details. He's been
Mhm.
actively participating in our Curmudgeon's Corner Slack, so he's
Mhm.
obviously not like completely like knocked out, unable to do anything. I think it's just he said he couldn't sit for long periods of time, so I think it's probably more like he can sit for a while, but then he has to get up and move around and do stuff. I don't think he's like bedridden, but but clearly it's uncomfortable if he stays in the same position for too long. And so these podcasts are usually like 2 hours long or so, and we could have done a short one. I could have been like, Yvonne, we can do 15 minutes, it's cool. But yeah, he was like, no, I'm out. So
Well, that's too bad. All right. All right. Hopefully this is
it means we get you, Todd. And so
wow.
So what did you want to talk about today, Todd?
I had a few things on my mind that I wrote to you. We just go in the order that I put them in my stream of consciousness email. I'm curious because you as long as I've known you, even though we've been out of regular contact for decades.
Yes.
You seem like a real wonk paying attention to political data and results and polling and things like that. And I don't. I rely on people like you to give me the big picture of the analysis, so forth. I'm very encouraged by the voting results in Pennsylvania, where I live, and even in the county, Westmoreland County, where I live, which is, Pennsylvania's become a purple state the last few elections. And my county has been a red county for even longer than that. But we saw encouraging results, I think, here locally and certainly statewide. The statewide results were national news. Pennsylvania has a strange way of electing Supreme Court judges. They get elected, and then 10 years later, there's a vote on whether to retain them.
Okay. Yep.
No judge has ever been no judge has ever not been retained. They may elect to retire, step down or whatever. So the people were worried because there was a lot of PAC money coming into the state to vote no on retention, but they wound up winning with something like 69, 70% of the vote. And then like here locally, I in my red county, in my red town and school district, a Democrat won one of the school board positions. That's not going to make national news, but it's unusual, And I got to say that our school board is not controversial, right? We don't have people out trying to push religious instruction. There's no strong pushes to ban books or things like that. They're mostly Republicans, but mostly, good old fashioned Republicans and not the sort of MAGA brand that you see too frequently now. And like one of the little towns here, Jeanette, has been solid Republican, one of these old manufacturing towns in decline for decades, elected a Democrat mayor for the first time in a while as well. So this is my, local and Pennsylvania view. I'm going on faith, Sam, that you're more aware of nationwide data or maybe other examples like mine. How did it look 2 weeks ago?
It looked very good for the Democrats. That's the one-line summary. But let me give you some more examples. There's a person, the account name is Taniel. They are even more of a wonk than I am. They have all kinds of tracking that they do for a website called Bolts, BOLTS, that tracks all kinds of local races and stuff all across the country. And so they posted a multi-part summary of this, of the results that night. And this was as of 3 p.m. Wednesday, so the day after the election day. And I'll read these to you in a second. And I'll also mention real quick, before I forget, last week we didn't really talk about the election results on the show because we had guests on last week too, and they chose other topics. But I will mention that this last week and next week, actually, I was a guest on another podcast called Sir, which I've mentioned on the show a few times. And in both of those episodes, one that's out right now and one that'll be out this coming week, they released on Wednesdays. I did talk about the local elections with the two hosts of that show. So I encourage folks to also tune into Sir and check that out. Okay, in the meantime, here is Taniel's summary. And this is somewhat long, but I think the length actually makes the point. Okay, so let me start. California's Proposition 50 wins. Virginia Democrats flip governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. Democrats defend New Jersey governor. Democrats gain legislative seats in Virginia and New Jersey. Democrats win New Jersey and Virginia trifectas. Mamdani wins in New York. Pennsylvania Democrats win state Supreme Court. Maine anti-mail voting measure loses. Georgia Democrats flip 2 statewide offices. Coloradoans fund free school meals. Larry Krasner and Bragg win DA races. I'm not sure where those are because I don't remember the names. Seattle GOP prosecutor down big. Democrats flip Connecticut towns such as Bristol, Milford, New Britain, and Stratford. Charlotte approves a transit tax. J.D. Vance's half-brother loses. Conservatives lose seats on large school boards in Pennsylvania, Texas, and Colorado. Mississippi Democrats break the GOP's Senate supermajority. Minnesota Democrats successfully defend the state Senate. Democrats hold tough legislative districts in New York and Washington, miss out on a New Hampshire flip. Pennsylvania Democrats win 2 open statewide judge seats. Pennsylvania Democrats flip Erie County Executive, Bucks County DA, and Sheriff. Pennsylvania Democrats defend county executives in Lehigh and Northampton. Democrats flip boards of New York, one of these county names, Onondaga, and Dutchess counties, a first in decades, and Pennsylvania's Luzerne County. Progressives may flip the Aurora Council and keep the Spokane Council. Only Republican on the Orlando Council loses. Democrats sweep Tucson. Large bond tax measures for infrastructure housing approved in Columbus, Denver, and Knoxville. Minnesota Mayor Jacob Fry reelected. Mary Sheffield wins Detroit mayor. GOP holds Columbia and Manchester mayor. This says Seattle mayor unknown, but since election day, the more progressive candidate has actually won in Seattle. Albuquerque and Jersey City runoffs. New York City housing measures pass. Proposition 6 does not. And that's his long list. And then you can go through his website and get even more. But it's win after win after win after win for the Democrats. And it's in some of these, the Democrats were expected to win, but they won by larger margins than were expected as well. So all in all, a very big, successful win for the Democrats that day, bigger than expected in most places. And of course, the tea leaf reading is, well, what does this mean for midterms next year or even the presidency in 2028? And, the real answer is, who knows? Lots can happen in a year, let alone in 3 years. But it's much better than the other way, as far as Democrats are concerned, for sure. It definitely shows that as of right now, if you look into some of the additional reporting on this, there's a lot where Democrats are just fired up right now and Republicans are not. And so a lot of this may simply be Democrats bothering to turn out and Republicans not. A part of it may also be sort of the squishy folks in the middle who were voting Republican last year, deciding that, hey, this hasn't turned out quite the way I expected it to, so maybe I'll flip. And so it's some combination of those effects. But, you're not wrong. Your examples in Pennsylvania were not isolated to Pennsylvania. This was nationwide, and moves in the Democratic direction all over the country.
I am not surprised by some of the things that you read, and you said that yourself already. It's interesting. You live in Seattle. The more progressive candidate won in Seattle. Was it like? Was it sort of like a Bernie Sanders running against Tim Kaine kind of race? Was it that sort of race, or was it the genuine Democrat versus Republican?
It was a centrist Democrat versus a progressive Democrat.
Yeah, interesting. And Mamdani, I know there was how am I forgetting the former governor inserting himself as an independent candidate?
Cuomo.
Cuomo, yeah. How do you? Anyway, I don't know how I forgot that name, Cuomo. But Mamdani, I maybe also surprising, but not terribly surprising that Cuomo. I don't know if Cuomo thought he was actually going to win, or if he was just trying to give it to the Republican to steal votes and give it to the Republican out of spite.
Honestly, I thought he thought he was going to win. I thought he jumped in wanting this and figured he would actually run away with it, and was surprised when that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because I think he has that kind of ego, and I think that as well. He thought, well, of course nobody's going to vote for this like crazy socialist over me. I think if anything, he thought Adams was the competition that he would have to worry about, and that just turned out not to be the case. And New York fairly resoundingly rejected, hey, forget about, there are a lot of things that have been said positive about Mamdani and his policies and his attitude and his social media skills and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there have been negative things said about his policies as well, just to be clear. But I think there's a key element here. I mean, Adams was corrupt and on the take, and he was taking bribes. And the only reason the charges were dropped was because he made a deal with Trump to help Trump, and get the charges dropped. And meanwhile, you've got Cuomo, who had a whole bunch of sexual harassment issues, which is why he was chased out of the governorship. But also, there was a lot of malfeasance related to COVID that people uncovered during that time period. He was, doing things that arguably resulted in additional deaths that should not have happened otherwise. There's questions about how he dealt with long-term care housing for the elderly and the rules that were associated with those, and all kinds of other things. People were very unhappy with him. That's why he is not governor anymore. So, I mean, if anything, I was discouraged by how well he was actually doing, but encouraged by the fact that he in fact lost. I mean, both Adams and Cuomo should have been disqualified on the face of it. Like, if you didn't like Mandami, fine, maybe there's somebody else out there. But these two in particular, absolutely deserve to be ridden out of town on a rail.
They are accused, certainly, and probably guilty, right? Right? Innocent until proven guilty and benefit of the doubt and everything else. But if they were just ordinary private citizens who did these things in a private employer, they'd be gone and probably criminally charged.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with you. That should be disqualifying. And I didn't mean to go down the New York City rabbit hole, but I'm fascinated by your take, because I know that you pay closer attention to these political details than I do. What I was going to say is, okay, a lot of these are unsurprising. Seattle mayor, New York City mayor, some Democrat was going to win New York City. But some of the other results that you ran down that I was not aware of: Erie County, Pennsylvania, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, and Onondaga. I think you were trying to say Onondaga.
Yeah, probably.
One of the Finger Lake. That's one of the Finger Lake counties in New York. These are rural or small town. Erie, there is a city of Erie, but that's a pretty.
It's not a big city.
Countywide. Yeah, countywide, they're red. These kind of things, from a Democrat point of view, are pretty encouraging. And yeah, I also wonder, does this momentum carry through? You validated one other thing that I was wondering was part of this kind of a matter of turnout, and that the Democrats are just far more fired up right now than Republicans. You and I are old enough to remember the Tea Party movement. This feels like a liberal sort of Tea Party movement right now. I have gone to several, not everyone, but I've gone to several of the protests this year at our county courthouse. First one I went to was admittedly on a weekday, on one of the coldest days of last winter in February. So I was out at the street corner with maybe a dozen people. The last one I went to, the second No Kings rally that I went to maybe a month ago by now, over 3,000 people by most accounts, which is 3 times bigger than the what was the first big one this year? It wasn't a No Kings, it was Hands Off. I think there was the one theme was Hands Off, maybe back in April or May or so. That one got about 1,000. The first No Kings got about 2,000. This one got about 3,000 in my county. Right? From those humble beginnings of a dozen people freezing and shivering on the street corner in February. It takes a lot to get people out to protest like that for a couple of hours, even if it's on a Saturday, even if the weather is nice. It takes a lot, because I got kids. They have things to do, right? So are people who don't agree with me politically will look at that and say, it was only 3,000 people. There's whatever, hundreds of thousands of people in our county. That's such a small percentage. Yeah, but the fact that people are willing to come out and make signs and put on costumes and peacefully express their concerns and their position for a couple of hours, I think is pretty meaningful. I said the same thing about these Tea Party protests. I'm like, these guys look ridiculous. They're out on the corner. They're dressed in their costumes. There's, a few dozen or a few hundred of them. But look what happened. That was a wave that impacted the remainder of Obama's first and second term, as I recall. Right? It swung in the middle of his first term, and then I don't think Democrats ever got back majority of both houses again after that. Am I remembering that wrong?
No. the I'm not sure of the specifics about when Congress did what, et cetera, but I think you're right. But I think to the larger point that how these things can change the tone and what's going on are important. A few weeks back, when Emily guest hosted on the show with me, we had a little bit of a conversation about, whether there's a group that's out there saying protests like No Kings are meaningless because they don't make a specific list of demands that have to be met that would actually result in change. And instead, it's sort of performative because it's just a bunch of people going out and making themselves feel better by going and having a rally and shaking their signs or whatever. But it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really change anything. And I think that's misguided, because while you certainly can have the situation where you have political actions with demands and you're trying to get somebody to give in and give you something. First of all, and I mentioned on the show when I talked about this, the more specific you get with demands, the harder it is to get people to join you, because there will always be somebody who disagrees with, you have 5 demands and they like 4 of them, but the 5th one, oh no, that's no good. Yeah. And you're getting very specific. Then the No Kings was a very high level, hey, democracy is good. We're unhappy with the things that are happening that are diminishing democracy and diminishing the rule of law. That's what it was. Very high level. That's all it was. And it was so, I mentioned that time as well that, hey, at our local No Kings rally, the League of Women Voters sent somebody to speak. They are notoriously neutral, but they were able to speak for this because it was just promoting democracy. It wasn't an anti-Trump rally per se. It wasn't about any specific policy. It was just, hey, we're worried that democracy and the rule of law are threatened. And you do get, and even without those specific demands, like, look, if you made specific demands of the Trump administration through this kind of protests, they're just going to dig in further. They're not about to give in to those demands and say, oh no, a few million people protested. Let's stop ICE detentions. No, not even remotely. Even if the protests got like 10 times bigger than they were, they still wouldn't do that. If anything, they'd be like, oh man, we've got riots on the streets, we need to shoot them all. But I think that protests of this sort still have a significant purpose. They do let people know that they're not alone. They show the magnitude of the people who disagree. They show even to the people who, like, let's say you're a MAGA person. You may see the numbers on the other side in a way that you haven't before. And because it's scattered all over the country, it's not just in a rally in DC. The standard thing is like, Fox News barely covered the No Kings rally. Even other major media, like the New York Times, famously had just a small note on the front page, and the rest of the front page was other stuff. Things like that. But because they're scattered all over the country, and even small towns, even small red towns, had these rallies, just the MAGA folks driving by, like, see, oh, there are people around me that actually think this way. Because I've heard lots of reports, not just reports, anecdotal stuff, but the whole thing about our information environment right now and how things are separated geographically is that if you drop somebody in the middle of a rural red area, they very likely think, no, this liberal stuff isn't real. Like, nobody I know thinks that way. Because they just aren't exposed to it, because they're isolated from it. They only are around people like them. And honestly, there's a little bit of that in the other direction too. I mean, if you're in a heavy blue area, you're not going to run into somebody wearing their MAGA hat all that often. you know. And so just but the visibility lets you know it's out there, and which it affects the tone of the conversation anyway. It affects the realm of what's possible, and yes, it affects enthusiasm for elections when they come about, because realistically, short of like some violent revolution or something, that's what you got. You've got a situation right now where nationally the Democrats lost everything, and there's not much they can actually do. I mean, we maybe, I don't know if the end of the shutdown is one of your topics or not, but like, you know, absent like things like that, there's very little they can actually do until they win elections again. And so between now and then, yeah, most of it is performative. Yes, most of it is messaging. Most of it is like, how do you get through to the general public what it is you would like to be doing if you could do something, so that when there's an election, you might win, as opposed to like folks saying, well, the rally was useless because it accomplished nothing. Trump didn't change any policies.
Yeah. Well, it's all true. It is performative. It does make people feel good while they're there. It's a good feeling to be among like-minded people, to realize that you're not alone. I'm repeating a lot of the stuff that you already said. It's all true. And also, I'm encouraged because it's representative of a larger amount of dissatisfaction with the federal government at the moment. And again, this is not data, this is anecdotal, but there was a surprising and really good feeling of being out there at a major intersection in the county seat, Greensburg, Westmoreland County. Many more people drove by honking and waving in support than, because you're gonna get the jeers and the laughter and you lost and that kind of stuff. Fine, but I'm amazed at how many supporters there actually were driving by, which tells me that there's people maybe who, if they were available or if they were aware, would have, like, maybe we would have had another 1,000 people up there on the courthouse plaza if people were aware. And to me, it's just a representation of the broader dissatisfaction right now, and it certainly showed up at the polls. So yes, shutdown was one of my topics, but I wanted to get your point of view on a couple of other things related to all of this. One is, I think I have heard accurately that turnout in general and among Democrats in particular was encouragingly high this year. I think Democratic voters are notoriously absent in off-year elections.
The biggest example of this, and I think, yes, there's evidence of that across the board, but the biggest example was actually the redistricting proposition in California, because that was the only thing on the ballot.
Yeah.
There were no candidates running. There was no presidential race, no governor's race, nothing.
There was nothing on a local level?
No.
Wow.
The only reason there was an election in California, and please, if you're out there and there were actually some local races, please correct me, but my understanding is the only reason this was happening was the redistricting measure. That's it. And they had incredibly high turnout for that, and it won by much larger margin than was expected. It was expected to win, so much so that both sides stopped advertising about it several weeks before the election.
Wow.
They were both like, it's a waste of money, we know what's going to happen, but the margin was still greater than anybody anticipated. I think it won by like 60-40 or something. And so the Democratic enthusiasm is out there right now. And whereas it does seem like Republican turnout is depressed right now, and I think that aligns with, if you look at Trump approval ratings, but other things as well, like right track, wrong track. Republicans, of course, are much more likely to approve of what Trump is doing than Democrats. It's not even the same universe. However, even that number is dropping. Like the it's still high among Republicans, but it's dropping, and it's
Mhm.
continued on a downtrend. And I think what you have basically, and again, anecdote, you hear all these things about Republicans who are like, yeah, okay, but this isn't quite what I wanted. I wanted them to like round up the illegal immigrant criminals, not the grandmother who cleans houses, you know,
Yeah.
or
Well,
and I didn't want him to like tear down the White House, and what's up with all these tariffs that we talked about before? Why are prices going up? He promised to make prices go down, etc.
yeah. The,
And to be clear,
I
there's still lots of people out there who will double down on everything and like Trump's wonderful, all this is good. Anything you hear about it being negative is actually liberal lies. There are plenty of those people out there still too, but the numbers are going down. So.
yeah. The last thing I'm wondering about the elections, because I've become very skeptical of Democrats' ability to win on a platform rather than opposition, right? I think Biden won in 2020, probably more for the opposition to Trump's first term than for Biden's awesome campaign. I
Absolutely.
I think whether he would have run for reelection or what became the Harris campaign, sort of abandoned their platform and focused on we're not Trump. And that wasn't a people were so unhappy about inflation in particular,
Mm-hmm.
um, that it wasn't strong enough. Like, well, Trump's going to come in and fix everything. Well, sure enough, inflation's been stubbornly not high, right? It's not like 9% or whatever it was a few years ago, but it hasn't gone below 2 like the Fed says they want it to be, and they cut rates anyway. But people are noticing it at the grocery store. It's unavoidable. For crying out loud, there's some energy bar that my brother-in-law asks us to buy because we have a Costco membership and he doesn't. This is just my little anecdotal snapshot of these things used to be like $21 a box. Now they're $28.50. Just since like April. Now, that's not representative of everything at the grocery store, but you see it. People are talking about I forget which publication put out the price of a Thanksgiving meal this year versus last year. They say, hey, look, the price of Thanksgiving meal from Walmart went down this year versus last year. It went down because they switched from name brand to generic brand, and they went from having like 20 items in the shopping cart to 15. Like that's why
Yes.
it went
Yes.
down. It's not a apples to apples thing. Um, we're a carnivore family. Price of meat is definitely up. Eggs somehow became a campaign issue, right? Eggs are not as expensive as they were, I think, a year ago, but they're not what they were 4 years ago either. And on and on and on. Yeah, I think people who voted for Trump are feeling this shit. And we can curse on this, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Curse all the
All
time.
right. And so yes, I did want to talk about the shutdown, and maybe this is a good segue into that. That inexplicably, Trump fought against SNAP benefits, right? I I don't understand that, and and
So
and and I'm bringing this up because again, where I live, and I think that Westmoreland County is representative of many rural or semi-suburban counties all over the country, whether it's a red or blue state. I think you find a lot of counties like mine. There's a lot of people I know voted for Trump because they had the campaign signs in their front yard and also are getting some kind of public assistance because they have the handicap placard in their car or just because I happen to know something about, and like I know they're definitely they're getting assistance. They're getting disability. They're probably on SNAP. They're probably getting Medicaid or some kind of um, Obamacare type subsidies. He inexplicably went after SNAP, and Congress is going after ACA subsidies. I don't understand how that is a winning formula for the Republican Party in the midterms coming up next year because they rely on, the reason that Pennsylvania is purple now instead of kind of reliably blue, which I think we were for maybe 15 or 20 years. Instead of being reliably blue, we're now purple because I think first Trump brought out a lot of people who ordinarily don't vote in every election or any election. And they happen to be those sort of voters who they feel like they can't get ahead. They blame the government, and Trump was speaking their language, right? It is the immigrants' fault. It is the liberals' fault. It is, we got to get closer to God and all these kind of things. He's appealing to these people who also rely on ACA subsidies and SNAP and probably other benefits as well. I can't imagine what the Republicans are thinking to go so hard after this stuff now, way harder than they did Trump's first term, and think that they're still going to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, the states that have been flipping back and forth for the last 12 years. Am I missing something? Like, did they? Because I know the doomsday. I'm sorry, Sam. The doomsday predictions out there are, well, they're going to do a variety of things to suppress the vote, and they're going to win by cheating, whether it's with the courts, whether it's with poll watching, whether it's in sending in the National Guard. And I guess Trump allegedly sent, I don't know, law enforcement or National Guard or something to poll watch in California and New Jersey. I never heard anything. I never heard anything from either side about that. It just seemed completely inconsequential. If it was some attempt at suppression, didn't work. Didn't even work enough to make the liberal news that comes across my social media feed, right? Just nothing. How do they think they're going to win next year? And my answer to that question, because I'm so cynical about the Democrats, is, well, they're going to win because the Democrats will find a way to fuck this up because they won't have a coherent message.
Yeah.
And they won't be able to get aligned. And all of these swing voters who are out there for the open to persuasion right now, Democrats are just going to miss it. All right. I don't know if I really have a question or a statement or anything, Sam, but what do you think about all this?
So, and when we'll take a break before we properly talk about shutdown. But to answer your election related questions, because we're an election topic now.
Yeah.
I think, what are the Republicans thinking? That's a good question, because there's different things at play right now, and you are starting to see cracks in between the Republicans right now. Because I think you've got several different kinds of things going. One is Donald Trump himself, who frankly is completely erratic, does not have a coherent set of ideologies or anything. He's just doing what he thinks will help him. And honestly, I think, his mental facilities are declining rapidly at this point as well. So even then, he might not have a good idea even of what actually would help him. And so you've got him sort of just bouncing off the walls, doing whatever comes to mind that day. That's thing number one. Thing number two is you've got the Heritage Society Project 2026 plan, where they've got like their wish list of anti-government conservative social stuff that they've had for decades and decades and decades, and they are rushing to implement as much of it as they humanly can, as fast as they can. And I think part of that is knowing damn well a lot of what they want to do is unpopular. And so they want to get it in place as fast as they can and ingrain it as much as they can, so it'll be really hard to undo, even if the Democrats win again. Because, I mean, just to take some examples, I mean, they've shut down entire agencies and entire programs. The International Aid Agency, USAID, gone. Everything they have done has been razed to the ground. And if the Democrats came back in and wanted to restart it, it would not be an overnight thing. It would take them a long time to get that up and running and doing the things it was doing before. And the damage to its reputation, you may not be able to fix in any reasonable time frame. Like, people won't trust it anymore that trusted it before. Same with the CDC. They've absolutely gutted CDC from the top to the bottom. They've, most of the, the reputation is gone. Like a lot of the prominent scientists are there have left. Those who are still there, and a spouse of a friend of mine works there, or they were fired, but I think they might have actually gotten their job back now that with the the deal that actually did end the shutdown. But anyway, they're hamstrung anyway. Even the good scientists who are still there are operating under constraints that make life very difficult.
Yeah.
And make it
This is
and so like reputationally, Democrat gets in, wants to restore the CDC. Again, it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, and it probably needed some reforms anyway. It definitely needed some reforms anyway, but raising it to the ground and destroying its reputation wasn't the right way to do. So like so let me finish answering your question and then we can discuss. But like so you have the second group, which is the heritage folks who really do have a specific ideological agenda. And they also like they're going to want to do a few things to like the shenanigans, the redistricting, things to make it more likely that they'll win in the future. But fundamentally, I feel like they are making the gamble that if we make enough of these changes and make it hard enough to change it back, then it's okay if the Democrats win next time, because we've made changes that'll last decades. And then finally, the third group that is starting to wake up right now are the Republicans who are in Congress and elsewhere who are pure opportunists and are just there. Like they don't really care about the ideological stuff, or maybe they have some vague thoughts there, but ultimately their main goal is to be in power and stay in power and to be able to hang out with the cool kids and have influence and stuff like that. And they are starting to see the shift, because in the Republican Party, the way to do that for the last X number of years was to be all in on Trump and to be all in on MAGA. But now, when you start seeing policies actually have negative effects, they start peeling off because they're like, wait a second, this is wrong. And I guess there's a fourth group too, the ones who are all in on the conspiracy theories. Like you've got the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world who are now splitting with Donald Trump over the Epstein stuff, because they're like, we thought Donald Trump was going to come in here and expose all the Epstein stuff, which of course we believed was just all like rich, powerful Democrats in the pedophile ring. And now it looks like Donald Trump himself is doing everything he can to avoid going in this direction. So what does that mean? It's like their minds are being blown because their whole worldview is being turned on its head because, oh, wait, maybe Trump was one of the bad guys after all. And so you've got these at least 4 different groups in the coalition who all have different motivations of what they're doing and whether or not they care about winning and what's important to them and what's not. And though they had all been aligned directionally until fairly recently, now when we're seeing actual negative economic and other effects of Trump policies, and we're seeing the Epstein stuff, and we're seeing Trump's popularity plummeting, all of a sudden the things that were holding these groups together are disappearing and they're starting to fray. And and of course with Trump, despite any random talk about running again, with Trump as a lame duck and clearly aging as well, maybe crossing my fingers that this fraying of the Republican coalition actually becomes more real as we go forward. Like we've had false starts before, going all the way back to the Access Hollywood tape during the 2016 campaign, where for a few moments a whole bunch of Republicans abandoned Trump and then they came back. And then January 6th, a whole bunch of Republicans abandoned him and then they came back. So we'll see. But it feels like this time is different because it's not about like one particular thing Donald Trump did. It's instead about the reasons all of these people had to be in this coalition. Some of those reasons are starting to be less true.
Yeah. One thought, and I know you want to take a break, that you're reminding me to temper my enthusiasm, and let's use CDC or Department of Education as a couple of examples, right? Let's imagine Democrats put together, or whoever the equivalent is of the Heritage Foundation, right, puts together
Yep.
their own Project 2029, how to rapidly restore what's been deconstructed. If I'm a qualified person who worked for Department of Education or CDC and was terminated because of Doge or the budget or RFK Jr. whatever.
Yep.
Okay, in 2029, when Democratic White House and Congress comes to me and says we are rapidly restoring the CDC, the Department of Education, we need you to come back. If I'm that qualified person who got cut the first time, I'm thinking about longevity. Like, how do I know you're not going to lose again in 2 years or 4 years and this is going to happen all over again? I think
Yep.
there's some lasting effect there that the qualified people who were very enthusiastic about public service until this year, they're going to leave and never come back. They're going to find some other way to pay their bills and to raise their families in the private sector or in some other less volatile part of government, or if they're close enough to retirement, they're just going to hang it up.
Yeah.
And I do think the one lasting effect I worry about is that qualified people who until this year would have happily been in public service, regardless of who's sitting in the White House, they're going to think twice before they do it again. Or I'm sure there are many right now thinking twice whether they even want to stay in it. You and I have a friend from college, from the old radio station, works for the Department of Energy right now. I won't name him because I know he's very sensitive about speaking publicly about this, but
yeah,
he's pretty concerned, understandably so. And his wife works for an agency that is, I think, also. They both are luckily in branches, departments, agencies that are, I think, far less of a political hot flashpoint,
right.
But yeah, but they're also these. I don't know about the guy's wife, but you certainly would know the guy that I'm talking about who works for the DOE.
Yep.
This is the kind of highly qualified, experienced person. You don't want him to leave the DOE. You want him to stay there until he's ready to retire. And there's tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people like that in the government right now that if they haven't already been terminated, they're thinking twice about sticking with it because who knows? You used to be able to count on this no matter which way the political winds were blowing. And suddenly
it was one of the, generally speaking, the trade-off for government jobs was you get paid less, but it's more secure and you have a good pension in the end. And you get to provide public service.
Yeah.
That was the trade-off. And you've destroyed that trade-off.
Yeah. All right. I think you wanted to take a break, right?
So I figure we've hit all the election stuff. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we can talk, you'd mentioned government shutdown specifically. So let's talk about the shutdown and the end of the shutdown. Back after this.
AlexMZilla.com. Bang Alex and Dad. Gaming, videos, and more from Alex. Elementary school by day, YouTube by night. AlexMZilla.com. AlexMZilla is ALEXMXELA, and .com is period and then COM.
Okay, we are back. So the government shutdown ended, and a lot of folks were upset about this on the Democratic side, basically saying, and just to be clear, the way that it ended is 8 Democratic senators defected and said, okay, we'll make a deal with the Republicans. The deal has been criticized as basically being nothing, but it did have a couple things in it. So the biggest one that actually had a real effect was apparently undoing some of the reductions in force that happened during the shutdown. So famously, the shutdown not only sent people home because the government was shut down, but they also just started firing a bunch of people while they were at it, saying, you know, we don't need you for the shutdown, but, you know, don't come back even if after the shutdown's over. Some of that was undone. So, so awesome. A few people were rehired that were otherwise fired. There was also a moratorium on more reduction in forces until January, until the end of January. So that's not that long, but and basically also just to put this out there too, this deal was to kick the can down the road 90 days until January. It was not a permanent, like, hey, we've solved everything, we've got a budget, we've got whatever. It's just another kick the can down the road. So we're going to repeat all this drama again come January. So there was the moratorium on more RIFs. There was restoring some of those people who were laid off. And then there was a promise by the Republicans to have a vote on the Obamacare subsidies. So importantly here, this was not a promise to do anything about the Obamacare subsidies. This was not a promise that such a vote would pass. This was just a promise to have a vote. And in all likelihood, such a vote would fail, you know, because you need a whole bunch of Republicans deciding to support it, which there are a few who've sounded squishy, but probably not enough. So, and even if it did pass, Donald Trump might veto it. So, like, you know, what the most of the Democrats were pushing for was, we don't reopen the government unless those Obamacare subsidy changes are part of the reopening of government. Like, we do it now, not a promise of a vote sometime in the future that we'll probably lose, but we do it right now. And they did not get that. Yeah, go ahead, and then we can talk more.
The promise of the vote, that's the condition that I was more aware of. I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't realize there were additional permanent terminations during the shutdown. I knew that there were obviously furloughs or people working without pay. I didn't know about permanent termination. That's unfortunate. So I'm glad that, you know, one of the conditions was to bring some back. The one that I think got a lot more media attention was the second, the promise to have a vote on ACA. First of all, what if Republican leadership just decides, you know what, never mind, we changed our mind, we're not going to have that vote after all?
Nothing you can do.
What do you
about
do?
it.
What happens? Right? So that's a very flimsy promise. The only benefit I could see by having the vote, the only benefit to Democrats is next September, October campaign season, you have all of these Republicans on record voting against health insurance subsidies that people by September, October next year will have been feeling. Because, you know, I'm fortunate. I work for a private employer who's covering a substantial amount of my medical insurance premiums. And I think the company's doing well enough. I don't have to worry about anything going away, right? But there's a lot of people that rely on those subsidies. And you hear these, I see and hear these alarming figures of people's monthly premiums are going to double or triple. They're going to go up by, you know, low four figures, which, if you need the subsidies in the first place, is probably untenable. So there's that fear that, well, people are going to just go off of health insurance now and roll the dice. By September, October next year, I think that's going to have a political impact. And perhaps the only benefit to Democrats, which is unfortunately at millions of people's expense, is we're going to get these vulnerable Republicans on the record as having voting against that. And in September, whenever you say, hey, your health insurance used to cost you $500, now it's $2,000.
Here's the thing. You had that anyway. The increases are because of the big, beautiful bill that passed earlier this year. What the Democrats were trying to do was to get them to undo those changes. But they voted through those changes already. You already have them on record for this, along with other things. And, you know, you sort of, what the people who are trying to spin this as good, as you know, okay, ending the shutdown was good, was first of all, we quote unquote, we got our message across. We shut down the government for longer than it's ever been shut down before. And we talked about healthcare, and more people are aware of the ACA thing than were before. We got the message across. And meanwhile, by the way, the shutdown was starting to hurt. The airline travel specifically, like lots, but not all, the defecting senators, a good fraction of them were in places that rely on tourism and airline travel to get there, or had airline industry stuff in their states or things like that. A lot of them got lots of money from that industry. Yeah, so there were some of that. Also, by the way, it was carefully coordinated. Those 8, none of them are up next election cycle. You know, some of them are retiring outright. Some of them just have a long time till their next election, et cetera. That was very much intentional, leading people to speculate that even though Schumer was officially against this deal, maybe he orchestrated it behind the scenes to sort of enable it to happen because the shutdown was starting to get painful. And one of the things that, you know, an argument that's been had is, do the Democrats just throw their hands up and say Republicans are in charge, let them do all the damage they can? Because then the voters will see how bad this is and revert. Or do Democrats actually try to make deals to make things better? Now, in the position they're in, they can't make many deals anyway. But, you know, do they stop the Republicans in some way, shape, or form from the worst possible results of their action? Or do they give them face-saving ways out? Like in this case, do you let them reopen the government? Or do you just, you know, say we said we would reopen under these conditions and that's it? It can stay closed all the way through to the next elections if it needs to, you know? And I think part of what, you know, and I think, and also thrown into this mix, by the way, is that the House was staying closed until the government reopened. Speaker Johnson made that clear, which was also holding up the Epstein stuff, and maybe they wanted to get on with that as well. But, you know, I feel like, you know, the Democrats want to say, we care about the people, and so of course we're going to try to fight against the Republicans' worst stuff. But ultimately, in the end, you know, voters don't pay attention to the back and forth and details of, you know, this week versus that week negotiation on the shutdown and who gave up this or who gave up that. You know, in the end, they're going to start paying attention right before Election Day. And for a very significant chunk of voters, the entire decision is going to be, do I like how my life personally is going right now? If it's yes, then whoever's in office can stay. If it's no, then vote the bums out. Now, that's not necessarily a majority of people, but it's a key group of people in the middle. The majority on both sides are probably people who are going to vote party line no matter what happens. Yeah, there's the people who will always vote Republican and people who will always vote Democrat no matter what. And on the two edges, those stay the same. But this squishy group in the middle who votes based on, oh my God, the price of eggs are up, so I'm going to vote against the guy in charge. And the thought process doesn't go further than that. When things are close anyway, which they have been for the last decade or so, then those people make the difference. And, you know, and so in the end, I don't know if all this back and forth matters. And so, like, is the best thing for the Democrats actually to let the Republicans do all the damage they want to do? Probably. And if Democrats were in a position to stop some of it, I could at least see the moral argument of like, we can't hurt people on purpose. If we can stop the Republicans, we need to. But the reality is right now, they can't really stop the Republicans. So it is what it is.
As a recently converted registered Democrat, because I was registered libertarian for almost 30 years. And I don't want to get into that. It really made sense to me in the 90s. It has made less and less and less sense over the years.
I also went through my libertarian phase. I was never registered, but I voted libertarian a few times.
Yeah, so. I was always libertarian, far more for their positions on social issues than fiscal. Yes. Well, I think that the federal government certainly has crept rightward over the last 30 years. The one place where it's crept leftward are the social issues. Marijuana, gay marriage, women's rights. These things are far more acceptable now than they were in the 90s. I think that's where we've seen more leftward creep.
That's still true. But this is a conversation I had, and I've brought this up on the show before. I was having a conversation with a friend of my son's, so his age, teenager now, but the conversation was several years ago actually, and they were talking about how bad things were now along those lines, specifically referring to LGBTQ issues, and I said no, they really were much worse in the 80s and 90s than they are today. But then after the conversation, and I never circled back to talk to this person again, but on this topic. But after the conversation, I realized that the key difference was not the absolute level of where we are, but the direction in which we're going. And so, yes, I think you're probably right that we are still better off now than we were, say, in the 80s. However, starting around, I don't know, pick a year, 2017, the trend has gone in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So we peaked, and it's been getting worse now for nearly a decade.
I have to realize and correct myself. Yes, there are significant steps backward, certainly in a couple of instances. And in one case, up until this year, there were legal, abundant options for minors who were transitioning.
Yes.
And those are gone.
And we also don't leave out the going the other direction on abortion as well.
Yeah. I don't know how to say this without sounding like a jerk. First of all, I'm not a woman. I've never had nor never will have to deal with becoming pregnant. There are options for unwanted pregnancies. If prophylactics don't work, there is not yet a nationwide abortion ban, right? There's options. There's no option for a 16-year-old who was born with male genitalia, but who is a girl. There's no good options for those people other than jumping through hoops, finding specialists, spending private money because insurance and hospital networks won't touch it anymore. That's it.
Well, and you're absolutely right. But I'll just say, this is another thing where it is now significantly different state to state. For both abortion and trans rights, and expand out further to social. I mean, other social issues. And I mean, some people say, well, that's good. That's federalism at work. But right now we really are in a place where for all of these social issues and I'll say civil rights issues, it is remarkably different depending on if you're in Washington State or Mississippi or Pennsylvania. It's in entirely different worlds in terms of how so many things are handled. And and look, I'm all for federalism in all kinds of different areas. It's good to experiment with different policies in different places. But I start feeling like that's not the right way to go when you're talking about like civil rights.
Yes, agreed. Just like the last time I was on the show, I'm realizing that we've taken a much longer tangent off of my original topic than I meant to. It's fine.
Quite all right.
I keep notes, so I want to try to get back to the direction I meant to go.
Yes.
But before I do that, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't during the first Trump administration or sometime in the last 10 years, didn't the Supreme Court roll back some Civil Rights Act protections specifically on voting in southern states? Am I remembering that correctly?
Look, yes, there have been lots of rollbacks, on the Voters' Rights Act. The Supreme Court took major bites out of it a few years ago. There's currently a case pending that potentially, and everybody expects, will probably strip all the rest of the power out of the VRA once they want it in a few months. The reason. The reason I asked,
majorly shut down.
The reason I asked is the redistricting in Texas. Would that have been allowed before the Voting Rights Act started getting peeled back?
Oh, almost. Certainly.
Would that have stood?
No.
Yeah, and for that matter, I'm not sure if the California redistricting would have stood either. It's notable yet unsurprising that the DOJ is only going after California for their redistricting, which was put to a statewide vote, and not the other states, Texas, I think Missouri, maybe there's Ohio, a couple others who have done or are trying to do. You don't hear the DOJ going after them. It's just California, which is unsurprising, but I think notable for its obvious political motivation. Well, the direction I actually wanted to go before we got into LGBT issues is, I changed my voter registration because at least now I can choose if I'm going to vote Democrat every time. I live in Pennsylvania. If you're not registered
Democrat,
exactly, I can't vote in the primaries. Unless there's something else on the ballot besides picking the candidates. So I'm like, I'm never going to vote for a Republican. I can't imagine that changing in the rest of my life. So I might as well just join that party and at least be able to participate in other, in the springtime rather than just in November. So what you were mentioning maybe 10 minutes ago by now of maybe some Democrats are taking a look at this and deciding, let's let the Republicans fuck everything up. My words, not yours. And we'll run on that November next year. That worked in 2020 and it lasted 2 years.
Yeah.
It is not sustainable. So maybe it'll work in the midterms next year and maybe it'll even work in 2028, but it is not sustainable.
Well, and also more generally, and I think that the tendency that I mentioned before of people who just vote for how are things going? If they're good, leave the people in. If they're bad, throw the bums out. Results in just this whipsaw back and forth because okay, let's say everybody's unhappy with the Republicans and votes the Democrats in. Well, guess what? The Democrats can't fix everything in 2 years or 4 years anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So people will still be unhappy. And then they put the Republicans back in because now the Democrats failed to fix it.
They can only slow the damage by taking back the House and the Senate. They can't really affect anything until and if they win the White House again. And that's the part I'm worried about. That makes me
even then they're limited because you still have the Supreme Court and you still have the filibuster potentially, unless they get rid of that, which they probably won't. And our system is intentionally designed to try to slow down rapid change. Now, what Trump has figured out how to do is to bust through all those barriers and say, I'm going to do it anyway. Just stop me. And nobody's stopping him. And the question is, and this is dangerous in its own way, like, do the Democrats come in and say, well, we're going to do the same damn thing. Screw all the rules. We're just going to do things and try to make them stop us. And if the Supreme Court says no, we'll say, screw you. And we'll do whatever. And then you basically, you've eliminated all the checks and balances that were actually good about the American system. And you have a dangerous situation on both sides at that point. Or, I mean, and I think this is kind of what Biden's mindset when he came in was, we have to restore normalcy. We have to go back to doing things the way we used to do them. And he did that to some degree, and he got much more done than anybody thought he would do with that approach, frankly. But in the end, because he sort of refused to recognize that the world had changed, he left all the doors open for Trump coming back.
Yeah. My pipe dream or fantasy or whatever is we wind up in 2028 with some sort of democratic benevolent dictator who will come in and, by the similar means as Trump, undo all the damage, and then quickly pivot to Congress to say, let's memorialize this into law that it doesn't happen so easily ever again. I'm not sure that there's a better way to do it than that. And then, that makes me nervous because as much as I favor most Democrat policies these days, I am equally, that's not true, not equally. I am still a bit uncomfortable with a Democrat having authoritarian desires as well. Anyone having authoritarian desires. Like, it's not the way it was ever supposed to work.
It's really hard to give up power once it's been taken.
Sure.
It has happened in history, but it's relatively rare, and oftentimes it takes something, it really is something like, okay, we rip apart the Constitution and start over, kind of event in order for that to happen, which has its own dangers.
Sure. One other note that I made, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes ago was about deal making. The Democrats, another reason that makes me cynical about the party, and I don't know whether this is my own uninformed bias or if this is demonstrably true. My hunch about Democrats is that they are always willing to compromise when, over the last 20, 30 years, Republicans have become less and less and less willing to compromise. So this latest shutdown, the end of the shutdown deal, I think is the latest example. You see the memes on social media. People will say, hey, how come, everyone says this is a Trump GOP shutdown. Why then did it require 8 Democratic senators to vote to end it? Well, when the government was threatening shutdown during Clinton's, one of Clinton's terms, as I recall now, but like Obama and Biden, like they were able to head it off or make it last a lot less in duration because the Democrats were willing to make deals to say, okay, we don't want this to go on and neither do you, so we're going to concede some things as a deal to get past the filibuster and reopen that. And the Republicans didn't, and I don't think they ever will in the foreseeable future. So there's no good options, man, because the longer the shutdown would have gone on, the more painful it would have been for everyone. And I certainly understand the political optics of flights getting canceled or severely delayed because of shortages in the air traffic control system. I understand that is political damaging for a lot of people. Like, as you pointed out, these senators who voted to end the shutdown clearly appear to be I wasn't aware of this until you pointed it out, but yes, of course, handpicked to vote because they're not facing re-election next year, and or they're in states that are particularly vulnerable to the most damaging aspects of a lingering shutdown. But man, they didn't get shit in return for those votes.
And also, it was just coming off that big election win we talked about.
Yes,
the Democrats had momentum, And
thank you.
And all of the polls about the shutdown were that people were blaming the Republicans a lot more than the Democrats. And you could see the Republicans starting to get nervous. You were starting to hear reports of certain Republicans being like, oh, okay, maybe we should give them this ACA thing. Just a handful, just a little bit, just hints. But that was starting to happen. You had Donald Trump starting to talk about maybe we should just get rid of the filibuster to deal with this, which, we've talked on the show before on multiple times about the pros and cons of getting rid of the filibuster, but to a lot of this would give a way to let the Republicans do that. Democrats can take the benefits of it later, potentially. Again, there's debates on that, but the bottom line was the Republicans were starting to clearly get nervous about the political effects that they were getting because of the shutdown. And at that exact moment, that's when these 8 Democrats decided, okay, now's the time to cave. Like, even if you accept the possibility that, okay, eventually somebody would cave and do something and blah, blah, blah. You had this happen at the exact moment where everything was going the Democrats' way in terms of both the elections and the shutdown politics. So the timing seemed particularly bad. Like, if you'd let it go another month, maybe the Democrats could have actually extracted more,
Yeah, well, as long as the sentiment remained, majority people blaming GOP for the shutdown, then look, my daughter's away at college right now and is supposed to fly home for Thanksgiving, but all right, I'll just go up and get her if her flight gets canceled, right? But that would really ruin a lot of people's holiday, which is a huge family event across the country, right? Let the Republicans take the blame for that kind of social disruption, because, man, people are still talking. The social media discussion that I would see about the Supreme Court justice retention here in Pennsylvania, a lot of it was still around the COVID lockdowns 5 years ago. There's a small minority of people still holding on to that because they couldn't get a haircut, or they couldn't sit at the bar whenever things started to reopen, people are like, they weren't following the science, and that's cherry picking, right? Policymakers were erring on the side of caution because no one knew how the fuck to deal with COVID. All we knew is that it spread really quickly and it killed old people. That's all we knew.
Well, and a key element in the beginning parts, and people also, I'm dumbfounded every time people talk about like early COVID restrictions and blame them on Biden when Trump was.
He wasn't president.
Yeah. But despite that, like, we didn't have workable treatments yet. We didn't have a vaccine yet. We didn't have this. We didn't have that. So, and we didn't have good information yet because we were. So yes, we were erring on the side of being cautious, but also even with perfect knowledge that we have today. Well, even now the knowledge isn't perfect, obviously, but even with the better knowledge we have today, a lot of those restrictions probably should have been in place. They may even have needed to be more stringent than they were, or better targeted. Some of the things we did were just wrong that we now know. Like, the quality of masks really does matter. We really should have been talking about N95s from the beginning and not these like surgical masks and stuff.
Yeah,
and it really was truly airborne. So when people put like these plastic barriers in between people, that did nothing, and in some cases made it worse. But we were operating under the best information we had at the time.
I think best information, and even sometimes just reasonable guessing. Like, I think if I put up a barrier, that'll reduce transmission. I think if I put something over my face, N95, okay, but surgical must be better than just everyone.
Yes, it was like
wide open.
Flat out, the better the mask, the better. Something is better than nothing. Even putting your shirt over your mouth is better than nothing. But like but the quality mattered a lot to how effective it was. And also, like, I hate to get back into the COVID stuff, but also a lot of at a certain level, it protected. It took like an N95 to protect you from other people. But lower quality masks would protect other people from you. Unfortunately, not about protecting other people from you.
Yeah. Well, I clearly looked at it both ways, right? I don't want to catch it, and if I have it, I don't want to give it to anybody else. But a lot of people did not feel that way.
The key being that people were contagious before they would know they had it. So
sure,
there.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and so,
but your point, getting back
to the reason I brought it up
is that people still hold grudges about those things from years ago.
Exactly. If the polling would have held and majority of people blame the GOP for the shutdown and that ruined Thanksgiving for 1 million families, they would fucking remember that next year. I'm not advocating for, extending the longest government shutdown in history by another month plus, but it would have sent a message. Probably, I don't know, we'll never know, but maybe a stronger message than, okay, let's end out the safest 8 Republican or the safest 8 senators to 7 or 8, whatever the number was, Sam, to wrap it up. Okay. That's the whole reason, by the way. I'm glad you circled back. The whole reason I wanted to talk about shutdown today is the Democrats had that momentum and a week later just
killed it,
threw it out the window. Like, okay, there, we don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like such malpractice. I mean, and I have read a few things of people arguing the opposite case, why now this was the time. I just haven't been convinced.
No, I'm also not convinced. They're playing by the old rules. I don't know. The sport I follow most closely is the NFL, right? Okay. So I don't know if you follow pro football at all. Okay. Well, a couple of years ago, they changed the rules for kickoffs to reduce injuries, right? So that you don't have 22 people running towards one another at full speed. They changed the rules to make that one play less exciting, but like hopefully you're not sending as many men to an early grave because of repeated head injury. Right. Well, okay. Those rules changed a couple of years ago. You can't kick off the old way anymore. And the Democrats are still trying to run towards each other at full speed when that's not the way you do it. That's not the rule anymore. This is now that I'm saying it out loud, Sam, I regret my choice. This is a horrible metaphor, but the rules have changed. And Democrats are playing by the old rules. I don't mean the rules that are institutionalized into law. I mean like the traditions, the customary way of governing the country. Trump threw it out the window the first time. Biden tried to bring it back. Trump threw it back harder and faster the second time around. It's like those days are gone. They need to be more cutthroat. And the final thing, this is just more about me than about issues, but the big thing that did it for me to switch from libertarian to Democrat, and the reason more and more that I've been voting Democrat, like I have nothing against billionaires whatsoever. I would love to be a billionaire, right?
I would love to too.
Yes, I don't think I have the combination of skills and motivation and luck to become a billionaire at this point in my life.
Yeah.
Fine. I have nothing against people becoming billionaires, but the trouble I have now is there's one party way more than the other willing to capitulate to a very small number of extremely wealthy people to get exactly what they want, to hoard more wealth that they will never ever live long enough to spend. They could spend as much as they can and give it to their heirs for the next 3 generations, and there'd still be $1 billion left in 200 years. And yet their political approach is to dismantle social programs that benefit the greater good, which in my opinion benefit everybody, because if people are not worried about paying the rent, about feeding their families, about keeping the lights on and keeping the house warm, if they're not worried about any of that, you're taking away the desperation that leads to crime.
Right.
Well, the Republicans run on crime way more than the Democrats do, but their solution is more policing, right? More brute force. You want crime to come down, take away people's incentive to do crime in the first place. I'm not naive, Sam. That's never going to eliminate crime, but there's a lot of crime that happens because people are at the end of their rope. They're like, I need something to eat. I need somewhere to live.
Yep.
So I can't find a job, or I can't hold on to a job, or, because of some physical or mental illness they're incapable of, and they resort to crimes and they wind up addicted and who knows what else. So, all right, let's give the least among us, take away that desperation and that need, and let's set a bare minimum. Like the country's never going to let you starve. We're never going to let you go bankrupt because of medical bills. We're never going to let you freeze in the wintertime or die of heat stroke in the summertime. Let's set that floor. Crime will go down and stay down. There's only one party advocating for that, and very poorly, by the way. As well, I until recently, I was a believer that you need those kind of centrist Democrats, that you need a Bill Clinton, Al Gore kind of Democrat, and I really don't believe that so much anymore. And it's partly because you see people like Mamdani and AOC and still Bernie Sanders today resonating. I wonder what would have happened if Sanders won the primary instead of Clinton in 2016. He was appealing to a lot of the same people that Trump was.
So I was doing the election analysis back then too, and in all the matchups where they were looking at Sanders versus Trump and comparing it to Clinton versus Trump, Clinton did do better in the end against
Is that so?
Trump.
Okay.
And so I remember looking through that primary process because Sanders kept making the argument that I'll do better against Trump, but the polling just did not back that up. Clinton did do better than Sanders in those head-to-head matchups with Trump in all the critical states. Now, that's not to say that the dynamics of it might not have changed after he got the nomination. It might have.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to, judge those counterfactuals. What is true along the lines that you said is there were a lot of Sanders support, and I shouldn't say a lot. There were enough that they were measurable and made a difference in the final result. There were a bunch of Sanders supporters who either went over to Trump directly for the general election because they were like, I hate Hillary so much, I'm going to vote for Trump instead. And there were a bunch of Sanders supporters who just stayed home and didn't vote in the general election. And I forget the exact numbers, but those two groups together, Sanders supporters who stayed home and Sanders supporters who went for Trump, they added up to a small but significant percentage.
Well,
I remember, and I interviewed on this show. I attended the 2016 Washington State Democratic Convention, and one of the people I talked to there was a Sanders delegate to the state convention who, after all the proceedings were over, like a bunch of us went to dinner and he was at that dinner. And I've told the show on the I've told this story on the show before, but not for many years now. He got out of, we were at dinner after the convention. Sanders had definitively lost. Clinton had gotten like the delegates from Washington State. This was not a surprise. Everybody knew this well in advance of the state convention. He opened his backpack, pulled out a MAGA hat and put it on his head. Said, well, since she lost, here we go. And I'm like, what the hell, dude?
Yeah.
Like, completely different from a policy point of view, but somewhat similar attitude of like, we got to break the system kind of stuff. But I think to your point though, like I also was always like, hey, the centrists are the way to go. The centrists, know how to compromise. We can get like moderate support. We can win that way. And anyway, incremental change is usually better than dramatic change anyway, because you get backlash to the dramatic change and all kinds of things get broken, and you're more likely to screw things up with a dramatic change because you can accidentally do something and have all kinds of unintended consequences. And so I was very much on like, go for the moderates, do gradual incremental change, and let's just keep making things better over time. But right now, and I'd always said like some of the like progressive goals, hey, these are good goals in the long term, but like trying to jump straight to that would be a disaster. And now at this point, I'm like, look, I'm looking at where the energy is. I'm looking at where, people seem to have some fight in them. And it's not the centrists. The
No.
centrists are just like, look like they're directionless, look like they are, even if they got in power, like you said, they at best they'd be trying to restore us to where we were a few years ago, and probably do a half-assed job at that. And I'm being more and more convinced that like the the folks who want to make more radical changes, even if they don't succeed in making the changes as radical as they would like to be, are more likely to get directionally correct results.
Yeah.
If they can get into power. I mean, and I am not ideologically bound on any of this. I am willing to see, like, in the Sanders Clinton example I just gave, if you show me 2028 polls that show your centrist, like, your centrist type person who's trying to appeal to the middle and blah 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 is actually got a better shot at winning against whoever the Republican nominee is than someone who I feel that I personally resonate more with their attitude and policies. I've said this like show after show for the last few weeks. I want to win more than I want to be right. And if evidence shows me that, the approach that I prefer is not the winning approach, I'm going to change my mind.
Yeah. I agree with you, with the caveat that I've come to realize opposition lasts for one election cycle.
Yeah.
And I mean like a 2-year, from
Yeah.
presidential to midterms. Like, opposition will get you 2 years if you don't have an appealing policy that you follow through and execute.
Well, and
you won't sustain.
And this is part of the problem too. Yeah, I agree with you completely. You need to have a positive agenda as well. I've said on the show over and over again, you also have to have strong opinions and defend them, is my view. Like, you can't just shy away from immigration or LGBTQ issues because you think something might be unpopular. You have to you have to work on, convince people that you are right and the other folks are wrong, and do that strongly.
Yeah.
But, and again, if I'm proved wrong by polls, I will change that view. But
Yeah.
But the thing is, even if you get into power, there are institutional obstacles, things like the filibuster, things like the courts, where even if you come in fully intending to pass your agenda, you may be blocked. And so that's where we come into, do you go full Donald Trump mode with screw the way you're supposed to do it, I'm just going to do things and make them stop me?
Yeah. Sam, will it be disruptive if I take a 2-minute break?
No. I was gonna say we should take a break anyway, and then come back. So I will play a break, but take as long as you need to come back. It'll all be edited in the end. So let's.
I won't be long.
I think we've about exhausted this topic. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll pick one more thing to talk about through the end. Here we go.
You're supposed to say do do do.
Do do do.
Alex Amzela! Alex Amzela is awesome. Its videos are fun. And today, once again, we have one of our most loyal subscribers here to tell you how awesome Alex Amzela is.
I'd say on a rate from 1 to 10, Alex Amzela is awesome at, 37, 82. He's pretty radical. His videos are phenomenal. They're full of creativity. And
they're so funny and exciting to watch.
Wow, what happened to your voice then, Amy? Was that Dad pretending to be you because the audio was distorted when it really wasn't because I told him to?
Yes!
Good job on remembering, Dad. Do, do, do!
Okay, now we're going to wait for Todd to come back. Okay,
I'm back.
you're back.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
You hear me okay?
I hear you.
All right.
Yes, I do. Okay, let me. Okay, we are back. So, Todd, did you have a third topic in mind? If not, I got something. I got a list. But
It's sort of a combination of topics, but I just wanted to add one more button on what the last
Okay,
topic that
go
we
ahead.
were discussing. I listened to a podcast called The Dollop. Are you aware of it, or
The
are you a
dollop.
listener?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I am not. I'm gonna look it
Okay.
up while you talk.
There are a billion podcasts.
I have something to say about that before the end too. So, go ahead.
Okay. I call these book report podcasts. This is one of those podcasts where the host reads kind of a historical summary that he's done after research, and he and his comedian friend sort of have fun joking about it as they go through. These are
Okay.
very progressive, liberal leaning comedians who host The Dollop. They did one in the last month or so, a two-parter, maybe a
Is
three-parter.
this Dave Anthony and Gareth Reynolds?
Yes.
Okay, I have the right
Yes.
one. There are actually several podcasts with dollop in the name, but
Really?
that's the right one.
Yeah, this is Dave Anthony, Gareth Reynolds. They did a multi-part episode, maybe 2 or 3-parter about Bill Clinton a month or so ago. And it was eye-opening because I remember all of this stuff happening, because like the first election I voted in was Bill Clinton 1992. That's the first one after I turned first presidential election after I turned 18. You and I were at Carnegie Mellon. I drove home with my buddy because I never changed my registration to, whatever district that is in Oakland. I drove home to Beaver County to vote that day. And so I was an adult through the 8-year Bill Clinton 2 terms. I had forgotten all of this stuff. Whenever you sort of put it in historical context, the way these guys were summarizing it, Clinton was, and like I remember his presidency, but they were going back to his early political days and governorship and other failed campaigns. His entire career was triangulation. He was never a liberal. He was never a liberal. He would try to read whatever way the political winds were blowing, and that became his stump, and that's how he tried to win, and that became his policy, and it's how he wound up working together with.
He was painted as the most liberal socialist communist that could ever possibly exist.
Yeah, well, and this is a different topic maybe for if I come on a third time someday. The perception versus reality of what is actually leftist politics in the United States.
Yes.
We've never really given it a chance. Certainly not in the White House. I think, okay, let me take that back. I don't know, FDR, perhaps. We haven't given it a chance in my lifetime. And everything that FDR achieved, the Republicans have been hell-bent on undoing all of it for the last 60, 70 years. So different topic. I didn't mean to get on this.
That's fundamental. If you needed to summarize the Republican agenda, it is undo the New Deal. Well, undo the New Deal and undo the civil rights movement.
Yeah. So I'm bringing that up just because Bill Clinton was perhaps the most successful Democrat socialist of my lifetime. I'm sorry, socialist. I said socialist. That's a centrist.
Yes.
The most successful Democrat centrist of my lifetime. And in the end, it didn't help us. I think that his administration capitulated and retreated for most of his 8 years to a point that it's going to take twice as long to ever recover. And like I said before, I think socially we've made a lot of gains in that. You're right to point out that I'm not thinking about the last 5 or 10 years of maybe regression on some gay rights issues and other things. But in that, there's much better social policy today, I think, than in the 80s and 90s. But he's a good example of what's made me more supportive of more progressive Democrats today is we've done this at the expense of blue-collar working people. And for different reasons. Well, for some similar reasons and for some different reasons. That's why Sanders was appealing to a lot of the same people as Trump. And the only other button I wanted to put on that is like sometimes small numbers are insignificant and sometimes small numbers really fucking matter. What was it, like 50,000 votes spread across Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin? That was the difference between Clinton winning and Trump winning.
Yes.
Sometimes small numbers really matter. And that's a case where they really matter. So like if Bernie wasn't polling as well as Clinton in the aggregate, but he was polling better in a handful of counties in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, that's all the Democrats needed to beat Trump in 2016.
Right.
We'll never know. The last topic I wanted to talk about, because this is what we were talking about the first time it was here, was tariffs. And part of it is, if you want to hear, I can share a little bit of what I've been experiencing in my professional life for the last several months. But part of it is I really just don't know. And I don't know whether you know or whether Yvonne would have known if he were here today either. I don't know what the quantifiable effects have been so far. I know what the effects have been in my industry. So I'll start there. I sell equipment for utility scale solar power. These are the giant, 2,000, 5,000 acre projects that you see more and more all over the country. They started out, they were very common in the Southwest and California and then in Texas, but you can build these everywhere now. Copper, aluminum, semiconductors, a lot of things that impact my industry and many other industries as well. They're way up this year. And I think some of that is just commodities pricing. That's going to happen anyway. But I think it's very telling that if you look at the cost curves for those commodities, the spike started happening this spring of this year, and hasn't come back down. The one that baffles me is steel. Steel's kind of where it was a year ago, maybe even a little bit lower, despite obvious, well-publicized steel tariffs. I don't know what to make of that. I also don't know what the global steel industry looks like. Perhaps there's enough capacity in the United States to meet demand that the tariffs have had less of an effect. But I know part of the effect on aluminum and copper has been, oh, well, we're shielded from competition, so American producers can afford to raise their prices now, and they did. Semiconductors is a different story. Like almost nobody makes semiconductors in the US at all. Certainly not the consumer grade stuff that goes into everything that you and I are talking to each other on right now. Like, I don't think any of this comes from the US. It's all coming from South Korea, Taiwan, China, somewhere else. And, you start to see these media reports. I might have wrote this to you in email that, people are estimating the average, I don't know if it's the average family or the average taxpayer is going to pay somewhere between like $2,000, $3,000 more since the tariffs began through the end of next year. That's sort of the extrapolation if tariffs don't change. That's how much it's been affecting consumer products and groceries and whatever else goes into these kind of calculations. But man, I am treading water because this is not my area of expertise. And when I'm consuming news media, this is not where I spend a lot of time examining data. I know the anecdotes that are getting reported. So in my industry, yes, it has made things more expensive, and it's made some projects delay or cancel because they no longer pencil out. There's no longer a predictable positive return on investment for the investors, and so it's cheaper for them to fold up and cancel rather than to try to make it work. Thankfully, in my industry, utility scale solar power, tariffs and even Big Beautiful Bill have been mostly inconsequential.
Okay.
And so like tariffs, but also I want to talk about the tax credits that have helped renewable energy grow so rapidly for the last 20 years. Trump pitched this as a repeal of the Inflation Reduction Act, but that's not what it was. The Inflation Reduction Act added some additional incentives to establish apprenticeship programs. If you're a contractor building renewable energy projects, it set incentives, tax credit type incentives to reshore manufacturing for all the capital equipment and components that would go into wind and battery and solar manufacturing. Those, by the way, haven't been touched. If you are manufacturing inverters or solar panels or the racking, like what my company makes, you still have those tax credits today. They were untouched and unchanged by the big, beautiful bill. But it wasn't a repeal of the IRA. It was a repeal of all of the investment tax credits that go back to George W. Bush administration. These have been in place for 20 or more than 20 years, and they're all going away. I am grateful personally for my ability to make a living, and for everyone in my part of the industry. I'm grateful that Trump didn't try to do this in 2017, because the industry wasn't ready for the tax credit repeal back then. But I think we are now. And I can see it by the sustained demand for the stuff that we sell out beyond the safe harbor deadlines of the end of this year, and then also July 4th next year, which we can get into the details of that if you're curious. But just, after that, developers start losing the ability to recognize those investment tax credits that have been around mostly since George W. Bush. The one additional investment tax credit that the Inflation Reduction Act added was, if you could demonstrate that you crossed a minimum threshold of providing domestic content to build your project, you would get a bonus 10% investment tax credit in addition to the 30% that has been in place for like 20 years.
Okay.
Trump repealed all of it. Not just the 10 that came from the IRA, repealed all of it. So after July 4th next year, if you haven't demonstrated substantial construction work on a project, then you have to fund that project without tax credits. And I'm happy to report that many developers are still asking us to quote projects that won't be safe harbored, meaning the industry is now ready to finance and build and commission and generate power
without the incentive.
Looking out a decade without these tax credits. So, the cynic would, and maybe I'm among them, the cynic would say, well, why do you keep getting them? But you keep getting them for the same reason that every business everywhere claims tax credits, because they're available, right? That's why. But this wouldn't have worked in 2017, because today, even with tariffs, even in the United States, with our labor market, you can build new solar power generation for about $1 a watt. You couldn't do that in 2017. It was probably, I don't know, $3 or $4 a watt. And that doesn't sound like a big deal. But, if you want to build a 500 megawatt, the 500 million watt project, there's a huge difference between $500 million and $2 billion. Like, one of those is not financially viable. So now, today, it is. I mean, economies of scale and efficiencies of the equipment and cost reductions that have come from, yes, economies of scale, but also just greater efficiency in manufacturing and construction. Yeah, my industry, thank goodness, is ready for all of this. But the tariffs are baffling to me, because I know the effect that they have had to our bank account and to my industry, but I don't know. There's a lot of preamble to what I wanted to ask and talk about, Sam, is like, are you paying closer attention to the broader data than I am? And like, what have been the real effect? Because it hasn't, I have to admit, hasn't been as catastrophic as I was afraid it was going to be when I was here in May. But also, he rolled back, right? The TACO acronym, Trump always chickens out, came from Trump deciding, I'm going to roll back these ridiculous tariffs that I announced in April.
So I think, so first of all, I'll caveat, Yvonne would be able to speak better to this than I am.
Yeah.
So maybe we can ask him to talk a little bit about tariffs again next week. But from things that, from my understanding, first of all, like the total amount that it would affect the average family number that you gave, you said like $2,000 to $3,000. The most recent I've heard is actually a little bit under 2,000. But here's the thing: this number has kept changing, and I've heard different numbers from different people, because the uncertainty is so huge, right? Because they have kept changing. I mean, I don't think a single week has gone by since the big tariff announcement where there haven't been adjustments and changes to tariffs, sometimes fairly significant ones, for one country or another, or global or whatever. And so it's still changing all the time. So that makes it really hard to assess that. in terms of what's actually happened so far and what people are feeling, my understanding is that in the commercial areas, lots of companies, first of all, stocked up on inventory to try to avoid, get all loaded up before the tariffs hit. And so there was that slowly tapered down. But also, lots of companies are trying, at least initially, to eat some of the tariffs themselves and take it out of their profit margins to avoid hitting the end customer. And there's a question of how long that will last, right? Like, part of that is just like, we're not going to double the cost of product X overnight, but maybe we'll ramp it 10% now and another 10% in a few months and another 10% in a few months. And eventually we'll get to recouping the whole cost of the tariff. Or maybe we'll, to some degree, accept a slightly smaller profit margin for a while. Maybe that's not forever, but maybe we'll accept that for a bit. So basically, there have been a bunch of these things that have helped cushion the sort of consumer level impact of a lot of these things. Having said that, if you look at specific products, you are seeing high impacts in specific areas. One that Yvonne has mentioned on the show more than a few times is the price of the bag of coffee he usually gets, which is some premium brand that he gets, of course, of beans, has like doubled since the beginning of the year. That's a significant change for that product. Now, it's not the most expensive product in the world. Like, I don't know the actual numbers, but it's like, $20 instead of $10 or something, which adds up over time, but it's not quite the same as, your rent or mortgage doubling, right? In terms of how it affects your life. There are some other areas. I believe toys have been increasing fairly dramatically. But it's very spotty. It's like on a product by product basis. Has it been affected and how much? So, and so people talked about how they have seen effects at the grocery stores, but that's also impacted of, well, but what about, like, eggs are still down from their all-time high, even though they're up from their low, right? Their recent low. And so people remember the high price and compare to that for eggs specifically. On the other hand, I believe beef is up, so it really is like, it differs on the product, differs based on how much the industry has the ability to buffer in the first place. Also, people are sort of hedging and trying to average over time because they have kept changing and you don't know what's going on. You try to do what you have to do, but not more, because it could change next week, and so this is another one of those things where I think you're right. Like, and I believe when I was on, when you were on last, but I've mentioned other times, there's this thing of, the anchor effect they talk about in psychology. People, when these first started coming aboard, everybody was talking about the worst case scenario. What happens if Donald Trump imposes these crazy high tariffs and keeps them on forever? And so people talked about these massive scenarios where you'd have empty shelves and the prices of the things you could get would be double and it would be like catastrophic across the board. Well, the worst case scenario has not happened. You do have taco over and over and over again. And you have the tariffs are actually more like Swiss cheese. We talked about from the beginning, like, don't look at the raw level that's being advertised. Look at the exceptions that get put in place, because Donald Trump is also out here handing out exceptions for companies that give him favors. Famously, like, Apple gave him that little crystal thing and a promise of more manufacturing in the U.S. That they had probably planned anyway, but he promised a bunch of stuff, and so they got some exceptions. So iPhone prices have not doubled, as one example. So there's this Swiss cheese effect that every individual product is different. Sometimes within a product category, some companies are different than other companies because one got an exception and one did not. And so what's actually happened is a lot less than the worst case, but it's still not nothing. I mean, like
Yeah.
$2,000 a month average for everybody is still, that's going to hurt a bunch of people. And the more
Yeah.
time goes on, the more they're going to feel it.
Mhm.
And yes, it's not as bad as it could have been. And so maybe, a bunch of people are like, well, they said it was going to be this and that didn't happen. Well, they're right. The worst case scenario
Mhm.
didn't happen. But that's not to say that what is actually going on isn't still bad and isn't unnecessary damage that could have been avoided outright. And so I think part of
Well,
the messaging case on it, I mean, again, going back to everybody doing the thumbs up, thumbs down based on how they're doing personally, when we get to the election, we're going to see how people are feeling.
yeah.
Do they feel bad or not?
Yeah. I'm clear about where I stand politically. I'm also glad that, and I often say Trump whenever it's sort of Trump in collaboration with Congress.
Right.
In this case, you could say Trump. I am glad Trump didn't wreck the economy with his reckless, in my opinion, horribly misguided tariff policy. And I don't think it's overstatement to say horribly misguided. He was imposing blanket tariffs on any import from any country. And okay, if the purpose of tariffs is to give protection to domestic manufacturing, then why the hell would you tariff coffee at all? You can't grow coffee here. Why would you tariff pineapples or diamonds? Stuff that you just can't grow or dig up here. The one example that I recall, and I have to admit what you said earlier, the tariff policy keeps changing. So I'm not sure if this is true today, but it was true over the summer. It was more affordable to buy a car imported from Europe or Asia that was assembled there than a car that was assembled in the United States. Because yes, we're not tariffing cars assembled in the United States, but we're tariffing the parts that are coming from Canada or Mexico or Asia or Europe. And that made the American made cars more expensive than just buy a fucking Volkswagen or buy a Subaru. And what's the benefit of a tariff policy that winds up hurting the American manufacturing that you're allegedly protecting? So I don't know if that got fixed or rebalanced or what, but I'm like, that kind of shit doesn't make sense, and it also doesn't get reported. So, and not everyone is buying a car every year, so they may never notice that impact. Or even if you're buying a car this year, well, the last time you bought a car might have been 3 or 5 or 10 years ago.
Right.
You don't have any basis of comparison, But yeah, I guess it could have been worse. It wasn't. Part of it was taco. Part of it was, like you say, companies, including my previous and current employer, deciding to absorb as much of that as we could and still be a profitable business. But and then my last company really relied on nearly 100% Chinese supply chain, and we were not able to pivot quickly enough when those tariffs went from 20 to 40 to 65 to 145 or wherever they landed. We just quit importing until things changed, which caused a loss of business and a lot of disruption for some of our customers. But I don't know, the other choice was, sell at a loss or ask our customers to spend more. Like, neither one of those are very appealing to either party.
Right.
I don't mean political party. I mean either party in that transaction.
Right.
I am finally, after 2 hours, starting to lose my train of thought, Sam. But yeah, I had tariff on the agenda because I'm like, okay, let's follow that thread from the first time that I was on the show.
Sounds good. Well,
but I'm running out of steam, man. Maybe we should go to your list. If
we can start to wrap it up. We've been going long enough.
Yeah.
I will mention before I start the close up the show stuff. The one story we did not talk about significantly are the latest Epstein things, which started to move again after government reopened. And I guess that's one possible Democratic rationale for let's go ahead and get
Yeah.
reopened, is to break that log jam. We may talk about it next week. I'm not going to talk about it extensively now, other than to say there's been a lot of news this week with the discharge petition getting enough signatures and a vote scheduled for next week. And meanwhile, the House Democrats released a handful of emails they'd gotten from the Epstein estate, and in response to that, the Republicans said those are cherry picked. Here's 20,000 of those emails that you can go look at to see more context. And people have been pouring through those emails and finding all kinds of interesting stuff, not just in what the Democrats released, but in the 20,000 the Republicans released. And, you know, and it all looks bad. I mean, which is to be expected from, you know, anything coming out of Epstein, but it's specifically, a lot of it looks bad for Trump, and he seems to be freaking out. And you know, the Republicans who voted for the discharge petition, he pressured them really hard to rescind that and take it off, and they seem to have just doubled down. He's fighting with several of them, and anyway, that thing seems to be heating up. We'll have more on that with the vote on the law to sort of compel release of more documents next week. Even if it passes the House, of course, it has to go through to the Senate. It potentially has to survive a veto, all kinds of stuff. So this will play out over a long time, but it's, you know, it's looking messier and messier and messier for Donald Trump. I will have to mention, of all of the things, the one that's getting the most traction in social media in the last 24 hours is the one email where Epstein's brother asks Epstein, have you heard this, Todd?
I think I know where you're going.
Yes, okay. Epstein's brother asks Epstein if he thinks that Vladimir Putin has copies of the pictures and video of Donald Trump giving Bill Clinton a blowjob. Now, it actually says Bubba, but everyone knows who Bubba is, right? You know?
Yeah.
Now, I am not even immediately thinking that this is real. Like, it could have been a joke. Like, if you look at the context of the emails, it could easily have been a joke.
I agree. I agree.
But it's still hilarious. People are making jokes about it. People are making memes about it. People are saying that both Bill Clinton and Donald Trump should be asked about it. People are saying that whether it's true or not, Bill Clinton should just come out and say it is true, because that would be funny. And you know,
this was on my mind. I didn't want to bring it up. I was gonna maybe bring it up in a more vague way, but since you broke the seal, it's ironic to me that the thing that might be the most politically damaging to Trump, of all of the nonsense that he's been caught doing and supporters have forgiven him or looked the other way, the one thing might be this consensual adult activity in a sea of pedophilia, right? Because you could see some talking heads starting to raise the concept of, well, 15's almost 18. Girls look older now.
Yes.
15's barely legal. Megyn Kelly said 15's barely legal, which it fucking is not. I have a 16-year-old. It is not barely legal. It's way off. And everyone knows that, right? But like, people are jumping to his defense, but I think there's a lot more people who will not forgive him for, number one, a perceptibly gay sex act, and number two, giving pleasure to Bill Clinton, of all people. That's the thing that will be forgiven the least. That you did gay stuff to make Bill feel good. It's like a double whammy that he's never going to win MAGA back if it's true. And I agree with you. The context of that email So you can kind of dissect it, ironically, the way that Bill Clinton may have on the stand once upon a time. The way it's written is not, oh, I wonder if Vladimir Putin has a photo of Trump blowing Bubba. It's, does he have the photo, right?
Right.
There's a difference between a photo and the photo. The photo suggests to me that there is such a photo. And then it raises the other questions of, like, all of these creeps, taking advantage of these poor girls that Epstein rounded up for them, must have known that this is illegal and amoral and awful, and you never want people to find out about it. How do they ever consent to photography or videography? Well, it makes me think that they didn't consent.
No.
And this is Epstein's way of
that
favor. And
that's been the rumor all along, is that he had hidden cameras everywhere and basically was compiling blackmail on all of these people, and that was the whole deal. And some people add to that, oh, and he was sharing those pictures with foreign intelligence services. There hasn't been evidence of any of this publicly, but that's the speculation. And the whole thing is, Donald Trump is just, the way he is behaving is not the way you behave if everything is innocuous. If everything is innocuous and you're innocent, you say, go ahead and release it all. You'll see there's nothing there.
He never misses an opportunity to respond to a reporter, even if it's just some stream of consciousness bullshit that he's making up on his feet that, isn't true. He's running away from microphones lately, which is uncharacteristic for him. And I know I could see that, I feel that I'm smiling. This is not fun, right? It's
the underlying acts here are horrific.
They are horrific, and so and
not necessarily the consensual Bill Clinton one, to be clear. If they decided to do that, just consensual, fine, good on them.
Yeah, fine.
No, but the
what
underage.
What I'm worried about, Sam, is because the context of, if that's real and if they consented to do that, they probably consented to do it in a room with one or two children who were not there consensually. So that's the part of it.
Well, and another part of this that was made clear to me by some of the survivors' statements a few weeks ago is that in addition to people who actually participated per se, there are most likely hundreds of people who were present and knew what was happening and did nothing.
Yeah, they were there for the networking and the food and the drink, and maybe also actual consensual sex among actual legal adults. Like, maybe they were there for all of that, but they knew there were children there.
They knew there were children there, but in some of these cases that have been reported, I mean, there was more detail on the Matt Gaetz one, which is entirely different and did not involve him, whatever. But the situation there was he was having sex with the underage girl in a room in the middle of the party. Like, everybody was all around him. It wasn't like they went off to a bedroom. They were right there in the middle doing it. So there were like dozens of witnesses, of exactly what was happening. It's just,
I know we're close to wrapping up.
Yeah.
I got a call 2 times in a row, which means call me back.
Yeah.
Can I just kind of go on hold here for a second?
Or go on hold, and then we'll wrap it up for real when you come back.
All right. I'll be back.
Okay, you got like 5 minutes to finish up, or do you got to run?
You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I should have let the Bluetooth connect before I turned the camera back on. So, just as a real quick aside, when my wife calls me repeatedly and I don't pick up the first one or two times, I know call me back. When my previously mentioned 16-year-old daughter calls me 2 times in a row, might be an emergency. She just got a permit. She's learning to drive. Maybe they had an accident. That's worst case scenario in my mind. Or maybe it is absolutely unimportant and can definitely wait. And it was the latter, I'm thankful to say. So I'm
Okay.
back.
Okay. So anyway, the it's just Donald Trump's reaction is just oozing guilt everywhere. Um, these things, even I think there's honestly, I would be surprised if he wasn't actually involved in the activities with underage girls. I mean, there's been enough circulating that points in that direction circumstantially
Mhm.
that it would not be surprising in the slightest. But even if he didn't, I think it's absolutely clear he knew in detail what was happening.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
There's been so much smoke around this fire over the years. He's talked about, his friend Jeffrey Epstein likes him young. He's on record talking about the Miss Teen Universe or whatever underage
yep,
beauty pageant that he bought. He's like, the nice thing about that is it's my pageant, I own it, so I can just walk right into the dressing room.
yep.
Dude, dude's a creep, and it's getting harder and harder to ignore that, even if you're a supporter. You know. So
Yep.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. But he deserves his. I don't know. I don't want to call it a day in court, literally, but I mean, if there's a lot of raw data coming out right now, like the blowjob email, right? We don't know what's real, what's corroborated, what's provable, and so forth. But 20,000 emails is a pretty big set of data, and I wonder what kind of patterns and trends and
And it's a
corroboration you're going to
tiny
find in all of
portion
that.
of what they're talking about eventually releasing. Like
Sure.
this is from Epstein's estate handing stuff over to a subpoena. This is not even the DOJ investigation stuff.
Yeah.
Not even.
It
And
it
they
it,
have
it
lots of other stuff.
it is unfortunate that he's going to be brought down by such a horrible, if he's brought down by anything, it's going to be this horrible thing that hurt so many girls. And he's not going to be brought down by like the 200 other shitty things that he did to make the country worse.
Right.
That
Yep.
sucks.
Yes, it does. Okay, let's wrap it up. So first of
Yeah.
all, as usual, go to curmudgeons-corner.com. You can find our transcripts. You can find all the ways to contact us. As of a few weeks ago, you can now actually buy one of these Curmudgeon's Corner mugs directly without having to join our Patreon. And all that stuff. And of course, we do have the link to our Patreon where you can give us money at various levels. We will mention you on the show. We will ring a bell. We will send you a postcard. We will send you that mug, all of that kind of stuff. It's fun. And at $2 a month or more, or if you just ask us, we will invite you to our Curmudgeon's Corner Slack where Yvonne and I and a bunch of listeners are hanging out, chatting, sharing links, doing all that kind of stuff all week long. It's a lot of fun. The more the merrier. Join in. Yeah, so I usually at this point, or Yvonne usually gives a highlight from the Curmudgeon's Corner Slack. Todd, I don't think you're in there very often, so I won't ask you for that. But
It's
I
been
will.
months. Yeah.
It's been months. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. We've got some folks who are in every day, multiple times a day. We've got a few folks who check in like maybe weekly. We've got a few folks who checked in once years ago and have never been back. We've got all kinds, but the more the merrier. It's a lot of fun in there. But I will mention something that one of my own things I mentioned, which is as I've mentioned on the show the last couple of weeks, I was laid off. I am in that unemployed period, and I haven't seriously started job hunting yet. I'm trying to sort of relax and do some of my own things for a little while. They gave me enough of a severance plan so I have a little bit of a runway before it, before I have no choice. Um, but so I've been working on some of my personal projects, and none of them are yet at the okay, I want to show this to everybody in the universe, but I'll give a preview again to some of you here on the podcast. This last week, one of the things I had been doing, by the way, is like I'd been sort of, I'd work on one thing for a few hours, then another thing for a few hours, then another thing for a few hours, sort of just to spread my time out over a bunch of things I want to get done. Some of them, like, projects that I'll be able to show or talk about here. Some of them just like things around the house or whatever. But last weekend, I decided to let myself actually concentrate on one thing and actually make some forward progress, which was a lot of fun. You feel a lot more satisfaction if you work at something for like a whole day or two and actually see visible progress, as opposed to you work an hour and then you stop, and then you work an hour and then you stop, and progress is very, very slow over the course of weeks. So one of my projects, Todd mentioned earlier in the show how many billions of podcasts there are out there. One of my projects is for podcast discovery. My basic thesis is that there are like dozens and dozens of places where you can go and see like what the popular podcasts are. Almost every podcast player has an add new podcast, and you can go into a directory and see like top 100 lists in a whole bunch of different categories and whatever. There's no shortage of that. But I've been thinking about the long tail of podcasts, because this podcast is the long tail of podcasts. We're never going to show up in a top 100 list. So I've been working on something where the basic idea is you put in some filters about what kind of podcasts that you're looking for, and then it shows you a actually completely random sample of podcasts that meet that criteria. So you can sort of surf the long tail. And within that, I've got mechanisms for you to sample the podcast too. So like if you just hit play on a podcast these days, 90% of podcasts start with an ad. And even the podcasts that don't start with an ad may start with like 5 minutes of introductory nonsense that is not necessarily the best sample. So I've got like buttons that will take a random, first you're randomly sampling podcasts in the filters you give. Plus I've got a mechanism to just, I want a quick sample. It'll pick a random segment from that podcast to play, so that you may miss those ads, or you may get unlucky and you'll hit that ad depending on how many they have. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not done with this thing. And I've also got a feature that will let you've picked your 10 random podcasts or whatever. Now I want to hear a sample of each of them and let you sequentially go through and do a minute of each or whatever. And I've got a way to like indicate that, hey, I like this one. I want to be able to come back to it later. Anyway, I've only built about half of the functionality I want to build, and it's a little flaky still. There's some bugs, and it may go down at any random moment if I decide to work on it again and break something. But anyway, to you as a preview for Curmudgeon's Corner listeners, please check it out. It's at jukepodder.com, JUKEPODDER.com. And check it out, play with the features, send me feedback. The address feedback, well, you can send it to Curmudgeon's Corner one. There's, I think I set up a feedback address for this specifically too, but I don't remember. So I'm, feedback at curmudgeons-corner.com will get me. And tell me what you think. Tell me if you like it, features you would like added. Like I said, I'm only halfway through my feature list that I want to add to this thing. If you hate it, tell me that too. Be nice though. Don't be too cruel. Tell me if you'd use it or not. Anyway, it's one of my projects that I've been thinking about for years, but I actually have time to do something with in this short interval before I start hunting for real jobs again. And so, yeah, so check it out, please. And also the other one that is not as far along, but is more complicated when I get to it, is something I call Robin Letter. It's robinletter.com. It's an alternative to social media to keep in touch with people that are not the folks you keep in touch with every day, but maybe you still want to know what's going on in their lives. Like, I don't know, cousins or, old folks you knew from college or whatever. All that's there right now in public is a brochure page, but I've also been working on that. I'm building the stuff to create accounts and all that kind of stuff right now, and I'll be doing more. So anyway, those are my 2 side projects that have gotten the most traction so far. Some others that are not as far along as these 2, but take a look at both, and if you're interested, like them, give me feedback. I'd love to hear more. So
can I just tell you quickly?
Yeah.
Sorry, Sam. First, the Robin letter is very appealing because the whole reason I still use Facebook is this is how I know what old friends and family are up to, and I hate it. Right? I want a Facebook alternative. I haven't found a good one.
That's the inspiration for this. Is all the big social media sites end up being about like clout chasing and you wanting to get lots of followers and posting things that get seen by lots and lots of people. The whole idea about Robin letter is let's get back to, I want to keep up with what my family's up to or my friends. And it's at robinletter.com. So, and all that's there right now is a brochure description of the idea, but also a link to email me if you want to be on the list for me to contact when I'm ready for beta users. So
that's awesome. I'm going to do that. I'm going to share this with friends and family. You could be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Who knows? The other thing I have to say,
that would be awesome. We did say earlier I wouldn't mind being a billionaire. Somehow I don't think this is going to do that, but I figure this is my best shot at trying some of these ideas. Like before I run out of cash and I'm like, okay, I need a regular day job again. I can explore some of these ideas and try building some stuff. And I'll be honest, the AI assistance for coding makes a difference here. Like I've been like, I started messing with computers when I was like 7-8 years old, and I've hacked together random stuff my entire life, but I've never been a professional. I don't know all the latest and greatest new technologies. I don't care to know all the latest and greatest technologies. That's not what excites me. But, with, quote unquote, vibe coding, as they're calling it, I can whip up some requirements and have, the AI. I'm using Cursor for this, by the way, as my AI assistant. It can whip up a prototype, put some things together, and it gets me like 80% of the way there. And then there are usually all kinds of problems and it looks bad. And sometimes it does stupid things, but then I iterate and it gets better over time. And, so like this Juke Potter, I have mentioned it on the show again, but this is the first time I'm saying everybody come look at it, because this is the first time it's sort of reached the point where you can actually at least do something useful with it. Like it doesn't have all the features I want, but like you could actually use this to find new podcasts that you've never heard of before that might be interesting. Now, the problem with the long tail is also there's lots of crap in the long tail. So you might have to hit refresh a few times before you find something that you like. But I think it's useful to be able to explore. And I am thinking about doing something like this for books too. It's just not as far along. It kind of replicates the experience of going into an old-fashioned, dusty, old used bookstore, where instead of instead of going to a Barnes and Noble or an online retailer I still shall not name, where you can where all the bestsellers are pushed at you and things that are specifically recommended for you might be pushed at you, but instead you're just going down the aisles and you say like, oh, I feel like a mystery book. And you see all kinds of old mystery books that may or may not have been popular, and you pick something up that looks interesting. That's the idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, and Robin letter, I've been feeling the social media has gone past keeping up with your friends for a long time. Like I first had the idea for Robin letter more than 10 years ago, but now I actually have some time to try to actually build something. So.
Oh yeah. Juke Potter, I just want to say, is appealing also, and it's funny. You and I met because we participated in the college radio station, which sort of specialized and prided itself on playing the long tail of music.
Right.
That I'm sure you remember the days that there would be. I don't know how much you were playing music versus just you and Yvonne.
I barely.
your
I played
show.
music only the bare minimum required to get my license, and I was doing public affairs and news back then too.
Yeah.
But when I did do music,
all music,
when I did do music, I used a random number generator to pick a room in the station, to pick a shelf in the station, and to pick a record for the station, and to pick a track on the record. And so I used this random method even back then when I did play music on WRCT Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So it's going from the long tail of music. That's how I know you. I am kind of stuck in a rut of the same universe of podcasts. And whenever I discover a new podcast, it's probably because I heard a guest on one of the other podcasts mention it. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Right.
I'm gonna go try that out. And over I'll get tired of one and they'll fall out of my feed, and the other one will come in. But it's like I'm in this same kind of universe. And I listen to podcasts for entertainment. I want to laugh. So I listen to stuff mostly by comedians or comedy writers. I could use a dose of something else. So I'm gonna check this out too, man, because there's something there's going to be something out there appealing. So that's cool, man. These are cool projects that I don't want to say you get to work on, Sam, because you get to work on, at the expense of continuing employment, but that's cool. All right.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to drag this longer than you
It's
wanted,
okay.
but yeah,
I get
pretty excited about both of
promo
those
my
things.
projects.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Todd, for filling in. We really appreciate it. Good to have you again. It was fun. So everybody, have a great week. Hopefully Yvonne will be back next time. Stay safe. Have a good time. Not too good a time. All the stuff I usually say. And we'll talk to you next time. Here comes the music. Okay. Thank you again, Todd. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'm going to hit stop in a couple seconds and then hang on until it says both our files have been uploaded, and then you can quit and go about your day. So we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, man.